Former President Donald Trump and his Chud running mate have won the 2024 presidential election. His return to office has been all anyone can talk about, with it looking like he will considerably alter the American political landscape. But besides making Grover Cleveland ever more irrelevant, his election has also sparked some serious discussions about voting and its relation to communism. Some truly brain-broken, low IQ individuals wholeheartedly believe this election has saved America from the Red Menace. Others, who refuse to have their insanity surpassed, feel Comrade Trump can now initiate the lower phase of MAGA communism. Finally, there are those who manage to close this circle, arguing that Kamala's regime would have mirrored Joe Biden's pro-labor administration, in the process somehow bringing us closer to communism. The rationale of this last camp, and perhaps that of MAGA communism, is justified by, intentionally or not, misconstruing the Marxist position on the bourgeois state. Their rhetoric reveals what they really are, nothing more than liberals painted red. According to these reformists, as Marx matured, he turned away from his revolutionary origins and began to preach the fruits of liberal democracy. Not only is this false, Marx having spent his entire political life fighting against the Lassallean servile belief in the state, characterized by a democratic belief in miracles, but the opposite is true. As time passed, Marx became increasingly antagonistic towards the modern bourgeois state, a development influenced by political events he witnessed. Marx's early works revealed the belief that the state needed to be taken over by the workers in a revolution, that a proletarian dictatorship was simply the workers conquering the state as is. This belief was forged by the centralized machine resulting from the First French Revolution. Marx viewed it for what it was, a powerful revolutionary tool which picked feudal weeds, otherwise stunting a germinating capitalism from flourishing. The state machine divided France into districts called prefectures, each led by a prefect responsible for local administration. These prefects ensured districts, and by extension the whole of France, were subject to the will of the central state authority. What resulted was centralization, which kept France protected from both internal and external threats. Under similar conditions, the proletariat could wield this tool for its own purposes. Thus, Marx saw it as crucial for workers to push for its establishment, a view reflected in the infamous Communist Manifesto.
In Germany, it is the task of the really revolutionary party to carry through strictest centralization.
A major event in France changed this: Louis Bonaparte's coup of 1851. He used the prefecture to quell revolutionary activity, to subordinate the departments and their population to bourgeois order. It was the centralized machine, a machine originally seen as compatible with proletarian rule, which crushed the true instruments of proletarian emancipation. What were these instruments? The local self-government and autonomy of the departments which prefects smothered. With that, the true motor of revolution was revealed to be not the centralized machine, but this thwarted self-governance of the French lower classes. This revelation led Marx to declare,
"The next attempt of the French Revolution will be no longer, as before, to transfer the bureaucratic military machine from one hand to another, but to smash it. And this is the precondition of every real people's revolution on the continent."
As is typical of materialist foresight, this assessment would only be validated by future events.
The bureaucratic military machine is this parasitic entity that binds itself to every aspect of the society it exists in. As addressed in the previous section, it was the product of bourgeois struggle against feudal society. What started as a revolutionary tool for middle-class emancipation grew into a pillory, subjecting the masses to this very same emancipated middle class. In the 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, Marx described this beast as
the executive power, with its enormous bureaucratic and military organization, with its wide-ranging and ingenious state machinery, with a host of officials numbering 500,000, besides an army of another 500,000.
For Marx, the model of the bureaucratic military machine was the Second French Empire. Now you may say, what makes this machine unwieldable for the working class? Observing the development of an actual workers' state is crucial to understanding this position, for it's here where we witness what the proletariat constructed following its momentary victory. One such workers' state, the Paris Commune, was established in France on 18th of March 1871. Marx was informed of this event as it happened in real time, describing it as the direct antithesis to the empire. How so? The communard's handling of each half of this wretched beast proves how truly antithetical it is to proletarian rule. What became of the bureaucracy and bureaucrats which compose it? They were disposed of.
The vested interests and the representation allowances of the high dignitaries of state disappeared, along with the high dignitaries themselves.
The military may be the second issue at hand, but it was the very first one the Commune tackled through
the suppression of the standing army and the substitution for it of the armed people.
After all, it was only able to form because the standing army was outside Paris fighting Prussian forces and had been replaced by a national militia which was composed of working men. Naturally, these men refused to take up arms against their fellow workers raising the red flag. The bureaucratic military machine is a fascinating topic which deserves much more analysis. If you are interested in learning about it, we highly suggest the final chapter of the 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, linked in the description.
The Paris Commune clearly and completely confirmed that the state must and will be destroyed by the proletariat. And yet, in 1872, not a year after this formative event, Marx would go on to deliver a speech which seemingly goes in the face of this entire development. A speech which contains an excerpt which has been a great source of pain for Marxists ever since, particularly in the modern day, with it being used by the vile likes of Vosch. It goes as follows.
We know that heed must be paid to the institutions, customs, and traditions of various countries, and we do not deny that there are countries such as America and England, and if I was familiar with its institutions, I might include Holland, where the workers may attain their goal by peaceful means. That being the case, we must recognize that in most continental countries, the lever of revolution will have to be force.
Peaceful means is implied to mean electoral means. How could this be? If the bourgeois state was antithetical to proletarian dictatorship, unable to be grasped by the oppressed classes, how could it possibly be changed from within, through elections? One limitation of Marxist analysis is the period in which he existed. Conditions around the world were not as developed as they would come to be, with capitalism still being in a relatively embryonic state, so Marx only applied this conclusion to continental Europe. The quote about peaceful electoral means reflects this, stating that force is the lever of revolution for continental countries. For countries outside of the continent, Marx still held optimistic reservations for the states which ruled them. The American state, our main focus of this video, had yet to develop the bureaucratic military machine which Marx had observed develop in Europe. This generated a favorable, if skeptical, opinion on voting for the peaceful seizure of power. Had history ended when this quote was spoken, we might be inclined to agree with those who repeat it. However, time progressed, and conditions would favor this position less and less until Lenin observed, in an obscure little work titled The State and Revolution, that the position taken by Marx in 1872 had become irrelevant.
Today, in 1917, at the time of the First Great Imperialist War, this restriction made by Marx is no longer valid. Both Britain and America, the biggest and the last representatives in the whole world of Anglo-Saxon liberty, in the sense that they had no militarist cliques and bureaucracy, have completely sunk into the all-European filthy, bloody morass of bureaucratic military institutions, which subordinate everything to themselves and suppress everything. Today, in Britain and America too, the precondition for every real people's revolution is the smashing and the destruction of the ready-made state machinery.
If in 1917 Lenin had witnessed advancements in state bureaucracy and military within England and more importantly the United States, today in the 2020s we can only come to the natural conclusion that these factors have only expounded with elapsed time. Just one glance at the American state reveals this assertion to be true. One can linger on this or that event in this or that century, marking changes in the state's character, but the reality is that looking at the modern American state reveals the very same parasitic monster which needed to be destroyed on the European continent. In the United States alone, the state power with its associated bureaucracy and military has grown to obscene heights. Countless departments have formed, all with the purpose of maintaining subjugation, such as the CIA, FBI, and NSA to name a few. Perhaps the best measure of this, the national debt, has swelled from a meager $2.3 billion in 1900 to the exorbitant $35.3 trillion of 2024. Both parties so commonly discuss this issue to no avail, both being completely incapable of fixing this natural tendency of the bourgeois state. Just how many audits has the Pentagon failed? All while continuing to receive billions. The military too has swelled in size and funding, with it accounting for more of the national budget year after year. To put into perspective how large the spending is, the US Air Force, Army, Navy, and Marine Corps each respectively have the first, second, fourth, and seventh largest amount of aircraft in the world. This expansion of state control over society, its alienation from society, has progressed at the same rate capitalism has, and will continue to do so as long as the current order stands. All these developments of the American bureaucratic military machine make it clear that although the American state may have once been seizable, it is now beyond salvation. By now it should be obvious that the faith reformists place in the state is misguided, regardless of the traditions of whichever one they may cherish. Any Marxist reasoning used to justify their delusion is falsification, and goes in the face of the materialism they try to co-opt. In its infancy, the modern state was a powerful tool of bourgeois emancipation from feudal society, and perhaps could have served the proletariat when large remnants of the society still remained. However, since its conception, this tool has developed, at the same rate capitalism has, into a weapon designed to subjugate the masses to the very same class it emancipated. The proletariat could no longer wield it. When Marx observed this development, it was limited to the European continent, meaning states outside of it could still theoretically be seized. Now, with capitalism having fully developed on a global scale, states universally exhibit the traits Marx observed as unwieldable. From China to America and countries in their imperial grasp, all have become a bureaucratic and militaristic bloated mass. Though evident that the only course of action regarding these bodies of subjugation is their complete destruction, there will still be those who stick to electoral means due to doubts towards the attainability of such a goal. It is understandable to question it as the grandest attempt to storm heaven. It is true, previous attempts, from the Commune to the German Russian Soviets, failed, and the state has never been more powerful than it is now. Yet each went further than the last, each provided lessons to illuminate our path to victory, one of the most valuable being that we must cut ties and scrutinize those who can't do the same with their precious bourgeois states. It is no coincidence that the Bolsheviks were successful and the Spartacus League failed. The former split from their Social Democratic Party early, giving them years to prepare for the foreseeable crisis, while the latter stuck to theirs for far too long, leaving them unprepared to guide the masses in the face of that very same crisis. With the power of the state and with it their handlers having grown, with the urgency of the situation at hand, we cannot afford to make the same mistake as Spartacus. We wanted to give special thanks to our friend BLUEBIRD, who served as a valuable consultant on this script. You can check out their writings in the description. Further, we would like to give special thanks to all of our friends who assisted in quote readings, them being Modern Marxist, Red, Kami Turk, and Alfonza. Their accounts are linked in the description. Finally, we'd like to give special thanks to my partner for helping us edit this video, and editing the thumbnail.